On the morning of April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant in Ukraine experienced a catastrophic meltdown that would change the course of history. The explosion sent a plume of radioactive material into the atmosphere that traveled across Europe, forcing the evacuation of an entire city and creating a frozen wasteland that remains largely uninhabitable to this day. But the images captured in the aftermath of this disaster tell a story that words alone cannot convey, a story of devastation, heroism, and the terrifying power of radiation. The very first photographs taken of the destroyed reactor were captured from a helicopter just 14 hours after the explosion. Photographer Igor Kostin was one of 3 brave cameramen who flew over the disaster zone on April 27th to document the destruction. The view was foggy, not from smoke or steam, but from radiation itself distorting the air. At 200 meters above the reactor, radiation levels reached 1,500 rentgens, far beyond what their measuring equipment could even register. Most of the film Kostin shot that day was completely destroyed by radiation exposure, turning black as if the camera had been opened in full light. Only the first few frames, protected by the roll casing, survived to show the world what had happened. What those early aerial shots revealed was shocking. The roof of Reactor 4 had been completely blown off, exposing the core to the open air. Debris was scattered everywhere, and fires continued to burn. Helicopters circled the site for days, dropping sand and boron onto the exposed reactor. The sand was meant to smother the fire, while the boron would prevent additional nuclear reactions. These pilots and crew members flew mission after mission through deadly radiation clouds, many of them developing acute radiation sickness within days. On the ground, emergency workers and firefighters battled an inferno unlike anything the world had ever seen. Photographs from those first days show men in ordinary uniforms, without proper protective equipment, standing dangerously close to the burning reactor. They had no idea what they were truly facing. The Soviet government initially denied the explosion had even occurred, claiming there had been no destruction, no gigantic fires, and no thousands of casualties. But the photographs proved otherwise. Within 36 hours of the explosion, the nearby city of Pripyat was evacuated. Home to 49,000 people, most of them workers at the nuclear plant and their families, Pripyat was a thriving Soviet city with schools, hospitals, shops, and an amusement park that was scheduled to open on May 1st for May Day celebrations. The residents were told they would only be gone for a few days, so they left almost everything behind. Photographs taken in the years and decades since show a city frozen in time, slowly being consumed by nature. The schools of Pripyat are among the most haunting locations captured on film. Desks remain in orderly rows, covered in dust and debris. Textbooks lie open on tables as if students had just stepped out for recess. Gas masks, distributed to children during the emergency, are scattered across floors in piles. Soviet propaganda posters still hang on decaying walls. One particularly disturbing image shows a doll positioned among hundreds of gas masks in a classroom, its blank face staring into the emptiness. The hospital tells an even darker story. Pripyat City Hospital No. 126 became the first treatment center for firefighters and workers exposed to lethal doses of radiation. These brave individuals were brought in with severe radiation burns, their bodies already beginning to break down at the cellular level. The basement of this hospital is now considered one of the most radioactive places in all of Pripyat, contaminated by the clothing and equipment of those first responders. Photographs show rusting medical equipment, empty beds waiting for patients who will never come, and birth records from the maternity ward left scattered and forgotten. But perhaps the most disturbing photograph ever taken inside Chernobyl is of an object known as the elephant's foot. This mass of solidified corium, a deadly mixture of molten nuclear fuel, concrete sand, and reactor materials, formed in the basement beneath Reactor 4 during the meltdown. When it was discovered in December 1986, 8 months after the disaster, it was emitting radiation at levels between 8,000 and 10,000 rentgens per hour. Standing next to it would deliver a lethal dose in less than 5 minutes. The photograph of the elephant's foot is grainy and distorted, not because of poor camera quality, but because the radiation itself damaged the film. The image shows a massive, wrinkled formation that indeed resembles an elephant's foot, with a man standing nearby. That man was Artur Kortnev, a Kazakhstani nuclear inspector with a dark sense of humor, who was tasked with locating and measuring the rogue fuel inside the reactor. He and his team used crude methods, sometimes pushing wheeled cameras toward the mass from a safe distance, sometimes just using their boots to kick radioactive rubble aside. Despite brief exposures, Kortnev later developed cataracts and other health problems from his work at Chernobyl, though he is believed to still be alive today. The workers who cleaned up Chernobyl, known as liquidators, were photographed wearing makeshift protective gear that offered little real protection against radiation. The army did not have adequate uniforms for radioactive conditions, so those working on the roof and in other highly toxic zones cobbled together their own clothing from lead sheets measuring just 2 to 4 millimeters thick. Initially, West German, Japanese, and Russian robots were used to clear radioactive debris from the roof of Reactor 3, but the machines could not cope with the extreme radiation levels and quickly failed. Human workers had to take their place, working in shifts of just a few minutes at a time before reaching dangerous exposure levels. Photographs from the months following the disaster show the construction of the sarcophagus, a massive concrete enclosure built to seal off the radiation from the outside world. By December 1986, Reactor 4 had been entombed, though the structure was only designed to last 30 years. In 2017, a new safe confinement structure was completed, a giant steel arch that was slid over the original sarcophagus to contain the radiation for another century. The amusement park in Pripyat has become one of the most iconic symbols of the disaster. The Ferris wheel and bumper cars, photographed countless times by visitors to the exclusion zone, were supposed to open on May 1, 1986. In an attempt to keep residents calm before evacuation orders were issued, the park was opened early on April 27th for just a couple of hours. It has sat silent and rusting ever since, its bright yellow gondolas now faded and overgrown with vegetation. Today, carefully controlled tours allow visitors to see Pripyat and the surrounding exclusion zone. The photographs they take show a landscape where nature has begun to reclaim what humans left behind. Trees grow through the floors of apartment buildings. Vines creep up the sides of the Palace of Culture. Wild animals roam freely through the streets where families once walked. All clocks are frozen at 11:55, the moment the electricity was cut. Yet some of the most powerful images from Chernobyl are not of abandoned buildings or radioactive debris, but of the human cost. Photographs of young children, victims of the disaster, receiving treatment in hospitals far from home. Memorial services for firefighters and workers who died in the immediate aftermath. Graves of those who sacrificed themselves to prevent an even greater catastrophe. The photographs taken inside Chernobyl after the disaster serve as a permanent record of humanity's worst nuclear accident. They capture not just the physical destruction, but the sudden and complete disruption of ordinary life. They show us cities that became ghost towns overnight, objects that will remain radioactive for thousands of years, and the incredible bravery of those who risked everything to contain the damage. These images remind us of the true cost of nuclear accidents and the importance of learning from the mistakes of the past. Chernobyl remains a warning to the world, preserved in photographs that will disturb and educate generations to come.